Hello everyone and welcome to Just for Today. Today we're going to talk about the 12 steps. These are necessary steps on your way to sobriety, especially just for one day. The first step as we read them is, and I quote, "We admit that we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable." The second step is we have come to believe that God could restore us to sanity of all things. And number 3 is we made a decision to turn our wills and lives over to the care and direction of God. Number 4 is made a searching and fierce moral inventory of ourselves. Number 5 is admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. That can be a tough one. Number 6, we're entirely willing that God becomes all of these. We're entirely willing that God remove all these defects of character. Number 7, humbly on our knees to ask him to remove these shortcomings, holding nothing back. That's pretty scary too, but it can be done. Number 8, made a list of all persons we have harmed, and became willing to make amends to them all. Number 9, made direct amends to such people where possible, except when doing so would injure them or others. Number 10, continued to take personal inventory of ourselves, and when we were wrong, promptly admit it. Number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Number 12, having had a spiritual experience as the result of this course of action, we tried to carry this message to others, especially alcoholics, and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Now, those can seem pretty daunting at the very beginning of your sobriety, so what we'll do today is we're going to cover the first step, which is we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol and that because of our alcohol abuse, our lives had become unmanageable. Now, you know what that means to be unmanageable. When you don't drink, things go pretty much as they should. But as soon as you start to drink, things become unmanageable. And that's just not in the time that you're drinking or, in the time that you're planning to party or things like that. It means that, you can't go to work. That your life has become complicated because you got caught drunk driving, and that you lost your license for 45 days or more, depending on which offense. Now, in 1988, I got caught drunk driving. Now, this was 7:30 on a Saturday night. Where I was going, I have no idea. I had bounced off a Ford Bronco, like that matters, on 128, just trying to change the radio station. That's all I was doing, was changing that radio station. And you know what? I got popped, and they drove me an hour from Westwood up to Framingham. Those are in Massachusetts, in case anybody cares. And that was a good hour drive. And I had been asleep for 2 hours, mind you, before I got in the car. Now, I got to the police station, or the Framingham State Police Barracks, and I took a breathalyzer. Now, this is, again, 3 hours later after I'd stopped drinking. I blew a 2.7. Now, that's nothing to brag about, but that's pretty hammered. And never should have been driving, shouldn't even have looked at a car, never mind drove it. So my life became unmanageable because I needed to get to work. I needed to get to school. I needed to just live my daily life. But now without a car and not a license, I had to rely on somebody else. So therefore, that caused my life to become unmanageable at that time. Never mind, all the other things that come along with being an alcoholic. Now, the definition of an alcoholic to me is how I saw it, and that's because I saw it as I drank way too much. And it wasn't a matter of being able to control myself, because I would get to a certain point, I would drink a certain amount of beers or drinks, and then I get to a certain point and all bets were off. I would be down, who knows where, doing what, waking up three towns away, not knowing how I got there, who I was with, or any idea where my car was or anything like that. These are the things that happen. And that within yourself, whether this is you or not. It could be a little bit of you. It could be a whole lot of you. I don't know. That's up to you to decide. So I look at an alcoholic as somebody who can't control themselves. Once they start drinking, they become a different person. Now, I didn't drink all the time. I was a weekend warrior, but I was drunk most of the weekend. And if I wasn't, I didn't have a beer, I was looking for a beer or going to get some. I was drinking way, way too much on the weekends and not remembering things I did. I quit at 27, I think. Yeah, I was 27. And I was a blackout drinker when I was 17. So that's 10 years of heavy drinking. Now, my life had become unmanageable because I started to lose the respect of other people. I started to, my parents didn't want me around. Even the people I drank with began to question themselves and, saying, well, this guy's a drunk. And, every time, I even sought out before not to get drunk. And what would happen is I'd end up twice as drunk. It'd be like I would deliberately say, I'm only going to have a couple of beers. But when you're an alcoholic, you can change your mind with one more or two more drinks. And you know what I'm talking about. And all of a sudden, you think you get home at 11 and you get home at 4. And, I can't get up for work now. I had a boss who would say, we're working tomorrow on a Saturday. And I'd say, I'll be here at 7:30. Boy, I'd wake up at 2 o'clock that Saturday afternoon going, oh, my God. But I had a nice boss at the time who figured that was what was going to happen. So becoming or being an alcoholic is something that you really don't have any control over. And it manages your life. It'll make you do things that you don't want to do or you normally wouldn't do. Do people say to you, you know what, when you drink, you become a different person? Well, if you might have heard that before, but I heard it a lot. You're such a nice guy when you're not drunk, but when you're drunk, there could be good Dan and there could be evil Dan. And, it all depended on what kind of mood I was in. But you have to decide for yourself. Has alcohol made your life unmanageable enough? Has it affected your life to the point where, things aren't going as smoothly and you're wondering why? You start pointing fingers at this and at that. It wasn't for this job and it wasn't for my wife or it wasn't for my girlfriend or my boyfriend or my boss is being a real weenie towards me or whatever. And, there's nothing that you can do about those things. And alcohol sure as heck is not going to do that for you. It's not going to change those situations. It does exactly what step 1 tells you it will do. It'll make your life unmanageable. So again, you have to decide for yourself whether or not you are an alcoholic, and that's a pretty big step. I remember, going to my first meetings and things like that, and I didn't know anything about staying sober. I didn't know anything about the program, and I just kind of sat there like maybe I shouldn't say too much, but the kind of groups I was going to is they kind of bring you out, and as soon as you go to speak, if the first words out of your mouth are not "My name is Dan and I'm an alcoholic," that's basically a rule. Is that you have to say to yourself, "I'm an alcoholic, and there's a reason why I'm going to these meetings." I got introduced to AA through family members who said that it might do me good, but being a stubborn Irish drunk, I said, what are you talking about? I'm fine. Everybody drinks like I do. Not too many did. And the ones that did are the ones that I hung around with because they didn't seem to mind. But I went to those meetings, and for the first time, I was able to look at my drinking and say, yes, I'm an alcoholic. That, yes, my life has become unmanageable. I didn't want any more DWIs. I didn't, want to have my father looking at me like, I'm the biggest turd or whatever, and that, people just didn't want to be around me. I was wondering why I didn't have any friends or no one wanted to go out. But, I started to make other people's lives unmanageable. See, not only does alcohol affect the drunk, but it also affects the people around them. And it's a very consuming disease, and that's what it is. But the funny thing about alcoholism is that you don't know you're one until you start to drink. And then often, by the time you figure it out, there's been a lot of damage done. And, saying to yourself that my drinking has caused a problem in my life is very, very important. It starts the beginning of the healing. It's that stick. It's that, when the doctor sticks you with a needle, it's kind of painful to say those words. If I could just find another drink, if I drink wine or if I only drink beer, alcohol is alcohol. The base ingredient